Damn, Daniel, back at it again with those sick-ass reviews.
Welcome back to Cady and Cady.
We are gathered here today to discuss Captain Mar-vell. It is the newest film in the good old MCU. In this film, we meet 14-year-old Billy Batson, who, with the utterance of a single word, can...
Hold on.
What?
You're thinking of Shazam.
The 1996 Sinbad movie where he's a genie?
No, that's Kazam, and it was Shaq.
Kazam is the Nickelodeon cartoon show. No, Action League Now, and, Prometheus
You're thinking
and
of Kablam.
Oh, yeah. Well, then I have no idea what we're talking about. Huh.
In Captain Mar-vell Studios' first female-led outing, Kree warrior Veers follows the shape-shifting Skrull menace to a plucky little blue planet in the Sol system. There, she meets a fresh-off-of Die Hard 3 Samuel Jackson. It's set in the 90s. I forgot to mention that. And together, the unlikely pair must work together to restore Veers' memory that she is, in fact, missing presumed dead Air Force pilot Carol Danvers. But, with superpowers. So, Cady, what did you think of Mar-vell Studios' Captain Mar-vell Studios?
I liked it.
Yeah?
Yes. Prior to seeing this film, I didn't know anything about the character or mini-world or whatever of Carol Danvers, except for what I learned playing my Avengers Lego game. It was one of, the little DLC things. And literally all I knew is she could fly around and have, laser hands and stuff, which, was fun to see.
She can do those things.
Indeed. But I liked it. I've recently seen a few other comic booky type things, which, reignited my passion for comic book things, as I have previously been a little bit washed out for MCU specifically, just because of other
She took
movies.
Infinity War really hard.
But anyway, no, I quite enjoyed it. I went in, with a, let's enjoy it for a movie attitude, which helped quite a lot, but I enjoyed it.
Well, good.
Yes. Jims?
Yep.
How did you like Captain Mar-vell Studios? Captain Mar-vell, how'd you like Captain Mar-vell?
Well, I don't want to say now. You just said that you liked it after months of being like, oh, I'm so burned out on the MCU.
Yeah, no,
And I was
it was a surprise for me, too. I did have a few, things about it that we'll talk about later.
Okay.
Overall, I enjoyed it. It was fun.
I honestly was a little disappointed. I didn't have a lot in terms of expectations because, before a few weeks before the movie came out, when I read this and 300 some odd pages of Captain Mar-vell stories, I didn't really have a great understanding of Carol Danvers or the original Captain Mar-vell or any other people that carried the mantle at any given time. I did rewatch a couple of movies in preparation for this. I rewatched Green Lantern long enough ago that my eyes could stop bleeding before we did this. And then I rewatched Wonder Woman because I felt like those two movies are probably going to have a lot of parallels drawn between them, and I just wanted to inform myself. I also watched Room, which is the movie that Brie Larson won an Oscar for, just because could not be more different. But anyway, I was disappointed by this film. I felt like it had potential, and it was just kind of poorly handled. I thought that the first act was interesting enough. It intrigued me. The second act just crammed so much in and glossed over all these things that could have been very interesting, all for the purpose of getting to the third act, which was very action-packed and exciting, but also kind of felt like a video game. It's hard to get into specifics without spoiling anything, so yeah, we'll talk more later. But yes, I was disappointed. Yeah. So, casting?
The director and writer of this film is Anna Boden. I don't really know any of the things that she's done. We have an episode of Room 104. Billions, The Affair. It's kind of a funny story. I'm not really super familiar with anything that...
What'd you think of her? Or the direction of the film?
It was good. And you kind of mentioned before too, it did feel a little bit rushed at points, but with action movies, superhero movies especially, that gets kind of tricky because there's so much that you have to get into the story. Yeah. And especially when it's the bridge to the big finale for Infinity War. There's just like little things that you kind of have to hit on. I mean, otherwise, knowing nothing about the character, it put me in the world. It was very interesting.
I didn't think that there was anything particularly special about the way that the movie was communicated in terms of interesting shots. There were no point where I was like, wow, that's a really beautiful shot. It was just kind of it was more about the storytelling. Which, of course, leads us to Oscar winner Brie Larson as the eponymous Captain Marvel / Carol Danvers / Veers. Brie Larson sort of came out of nowhere in a lot of ways. I mean, as recently as a few years ago, I would never have even been able to tell you who she was. And now she's literally the first female lead character in a Marvel movie, which is... but, I mean, like I mentioned before... I watched Room in preparation for this just to get a sense of who she was as an actress in terms of skill. She's very good. They don't typically give Oscars to actresses that aren't good at acting. But she's also sort of chameleoned her way into a lot of things that I was very familiar with in the past, but she just like kind of cameoed as a character, and we never forgot. She appeared in, I think, 3 episodes of Community as Abed's quirky girlfriend, I think in seasons 4 and 5. And I remember the character, and I would never have connected those dots. She also apparently was Ruxin's au pair in a couple episodes of The League, which again, I absolutely remember that arc, but would never have made the connection. I thought that she was as good as she could be. Again, it's a little hard to say because I personally felt that the script was kind of weak, but it certainly was not Alison Brie's fault. I think she carried all the gravitas that was needed for her to portray the character of Carol Danvers, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, the only thing that I had really was super familiar with her before this was Scott Pilgrim.
Yeah.
And I mean, for the longest time, too, I would recognize her as from Scott Pilgrim, but it took me a while to connect her name. But once I realized that that's who it was in this movie, I was genuinely excited for it because I do adore her. So
yeah.
The next person in this film is someone you may have heard of. He is the baddest motherfucker of them all. It is Samuel L. Jackson.
Oh yeah, I've heard him.
Yes. As returning as Nick Fury in this movie, he is a babby agent, which is very adorable, and it was the best thing ever. He's been in so many things. Pulp Fiction, of course.
Let's just name all the Tarantino movies just to get him out of the way.
Yes. Like, just, that's its own category.
Hateful Eight. I assume he was in Kill Bill somewhere in the background. But yeah, I mean, everybody knows who Samuel L. Jackson is. He's a bad motherfucker. And when he's not playing a bad motherfucker, he generally isn't very good. Star Wars. I found it a little bit interesting that his character was largely comic relief. And don't get me wrong, Samuel L. Jackson's a very funny man. But he's not usually, like,
utilized
funny.
Such,
yeah. And here, he got some really big laughs. Sometimes inappropriately big laughs. I do say so myself. But yeah. we had an interesting audience in the theater. Ben Mendelsohn of Rogue One, A Star Wars Story fame, as the leader of the Skrull menace, Talos. And I'm not going to say much more because it technically gets kind of spoilery. I actually liked his character more than I expected to. There was definitely a level of depth to the Skrulls that I was not anticipating. I thought he was fine, and I can't say for sure if it was his acting that brought Talos to life personally for me, or if that was the exception to the weak script thing, and that they were just very well written. I think it was a combination of both.
Jude Law was also in this film as Yon-Rogg, who is the Kree commander of the unit. Star Force, I believe is what they were called. He's also been in a bunch of stuff, a few different fandoms.
We've talked about him before.
He was in, let's see, Sherlock Holmes. That movie.
He was.
I think that's it. Definitely not Harry Potter.
Oh, okay. I see what you're doing.
Well, no, technically not Harry Potter.
It's the Wizarding World.
The most recent Dumbledore.
Yes. Third Dumbledore.
Third?
As I like to call him.
That is true.
There was a lot of chatter leading up to this movie where people were like, oh yeah, he's playing the original Captain Mar-vell, who's like Carol Danvers' mentor. Yon-Rogg was a romantic rival to Mar-vell. They were both in love with the same woman, whose heart only belonged to Mar-vell, and he sent him to Earth in hopes that he could, like, secretly off him on his mission. They took a good long time revealing that Yon-Rogg's name was Yon-Rogg. I don't think he's referred to it at all by name in the first half of the movie.
This is the first time I can recall hearing his name at all.
So, because I was waiting for it the whole time, because people talked about how, oh yeah, he's playing Mar-vell, and then they did come out probably 6 months ago and said, no, his character is Yon-Rogg, and I was like, I don't know who that is. Now I know. But I still thought that maybe, just maybe, because they wanted him to be, they said, no, he's Yon-Rogg, and they were like, winking and laughing.
Misdirect.
Yeah, exactly. He absolutely was not Mar-vell. He was Yon-Rogg, and again, can't really talk too much without bordering on spoilers. But Jude Law, there's not really much to say. I mean, Jude Law, he knows his way around the script. Speaking of nothing, we had Annette Bening appearing as one Dr. Wendy Lawson. It's a little hard to even speak about her comic book origins without getting a little bit spoiled. I wouldn't say that her role is anything of a twist, but if you haven't seen the movie, I don't want to. You'll recognize her. I only recognized one role on her IMDb page, and that was from what was once one of my favorite movies ever, American Beauty. I have not watched it since Kevin Spacey surprised exactly no one.
I haven't seen it at all yet.
And I want to watch it with you, but I just don't think I can anymore. Anyway, she was fine, but not. She was a relatively minor character, really more of a plot device than anything.
Lashana Lynch is Maria Rambeau, who, for the purposes of this film, is Carol Danvers' best friend.
Doesn't really have an extensive acting career. Nothing either of us have ever heard of. It should also be mentioned here that I believe she was, based on my limited knowledge, based off the probably 10 Captain Marvel stories I've read. She doesn't appear to exist in the comics. She is fabricated for the movie. It should also be noted that her daughter is named Monica, and Monica Rambeau is from the comics. But in the comics, her mother was a tailor, and in this, she's a fighter pilot. So, I mean,
They sure tailored her backstory for the movie.
Triumphantly returning to the Marvel films after, 8 years away?
Yeah.
Clark Gregg as a young, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed Phil Coulson. I did not get why fans loved Coulson so much. For the longest time, I think the only thing I'd really seen him in, that I remember him being in, before the MCU, was Topher Grace, Scarlett Johansson, In Good Company. And he played kind of a dick corporate businessman. And I feel like I'd seen him in other things playing basically that same role, so I just associated that in my head. So I just assumed, he's walking around the MCU in a suit, and he looks like a dick. He's probably a dick, right? People loved Phil Coulson so much, and especially when we got to the Avengers, and he started showing his nerdy side a little bit, and I was like, okay, I kind of get it, but it's like, why? He does not deserve the love that he's getting. Since then, I am completely up to date on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and I thoroughly enjoy it, and I really like the character of Coulson. I would have loved to see more of him in this movie. He doesn't do a lot, but it was still nice to see him. I mean, if we're being honest here, what actors in the MCU can rival the amount of time spent as that character?
I was just going to say, I think he's one of the only actors in the MCU who every iteration of his character he has voiced in video games.
Video games. But he's been around since the first MCU movie.
Yeah.
And he's been in basically every episode of a 5-season, going on 6, television series. He has spent more time as Phil Coulson than Tony Stark has spent as Iron Man. RDJ has spent as Tony Stark.
That's what you said.
Exactly. And they're the same person. So maybe I'm wrong, but you know what I mean. It was nice to see him, and I hope that revealing to you that he's in this movie doesn't ruin it, because if you weren't expecting to see him, it's probably a nice little surprise.
Gemma Chan of Crazy Rich Asian fame is Minerva, who is one of the Star Force elite unit group people. Knowing not much about, the character, she seemed fine in the role.
Yeah, I don't think... I haven't seen Crazy Rich Asians, so...
She was fantastic.
I don't have a great understanding of this actress's abilities. And in this movie, I would say that remains true, because she probably has 3 lines, and... Yeah, the Star Force is not as major a player as the advertising campaign would have you believe, so... I am most certainly pronouncing this incorrectly, but I'm going to give it my best. Djimon Hounsou, returning as Korath, whom we've seen once before in the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie. He's the one who, when Peter Quill introduced himself as Star-Lord, said, "Who?" That guy. It was very clearly sort of just a. I actually like the little nods like that, where like these characters all existed before this, and it's like, okay, so this character's there too. There are some references in the movie that just get way out of hand, but that one I liked. He was another member of Star Force, an important enough one to get a poster, even though several of the others did not, which is why we're not talking about them. Beardicus Weirdicus, or whatever his name was.
I know exactly who you're talking about. That
actor, interestingly enough, is actually in the upcoming, DC Captain Marvel movie Shazam as the Wizard.
The Genie movie?
Yes, he was. I guess he was an Aquaman. He also, not his first foray with Marvel. He was the voice of T'Challa in a Black Panther miniseries back in 2010 that I have not watched, so I can't. But yeah, I mean, it's like I said, his presence was non-invasive. If you didn't think too hard about it, I'm sure there are a lot of people who have even seen Guardians of the Galaxy who won't make that connection. Even you.
It took me a moment.
You were like, I know, I recognize him from somewhere.
Why do I know him? And so, that would be why.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was a nice little throwback. Forward? Throw forward.
Do we really have to do the cat?
Yes. Goose got a character poster. We have to talk about the cat.
Goose the cat was portrayed by Reggie, Gonzo, Archie, and Rizzo.
No idea which one actually appears in the poster.
Yeah, a rotation of cats to play, the coolest cat, Goose.
Goose is mostly a prop. And if Samuel L. Jackson is not the only comic relief, then Goose is the backup. But I feel like most of his interactions are funny because of Samuel L. Jackson.
Yes, yes.
So, again, can't talk too much about Goose without spoiling stuff, so...
Damn, Daniel, back at it again with those sick-ass spoilers. Did it work any better the second time?
It did not. I think what she's trying to say is that moving forward, there's a very good chance that we're going to talk about things that could potentially spoil elements of the movie for you. So, if you haven't seen it, go see it. Come back. We'll still be here.
We'll wait.
Now, speaking of,
yes, there's
a nice moment at the very beginning, before the movie even really starts. If you're seeing this before you see the movie, it might take away a little bit of the impact, but, the big swelling Marvel Studios logo and all that stuff, usually it's projected with Hulk and Iron Man, a bunch of other Marvel superheroes.
Clips from the movies.
Yeah, exactly, and things like that. This time, it's just a bunch of renderings of the late, great Stanley Marvel, as sort of an homage to his long and fruitful life. Sadly no longer with us, but goddamn, that man made an impression.
It was very heartwarming. Some of it were like clips of him like as the characters or like behind the scenes stuff, and it was very nice.
It's nice.
The first note that I have is it opens up on sort of like a crash scene.
Yep.
But initially, it's a very close up on like some dirt or dust or whatever, and it was very reminiscent of the half of the universe gone snappy dust. It was very, very apparent to me anyway, and it was just it was a very interesting moment.
Yeah, because I remember having the same thought. I mean, I knew the movie took place in the 90s, so I knew that what I was seeing probably was not actually the snap, but it felt very deliberate that they started it with a scene of like smoke and ash.
I had a genuine moment of, oh god, not again, because I can't handle it again.
Well, you don't even care about these characters yet.
No, I know, but it just flashbacks. In the beginning of the film, during that first opening sequence, when it kind of cuts away from the dust and to Veers, she is like, I think her nose is bleeding or her lip is cut or something, and she has like the blue Kree blood.
Yeah.
And then once we're reliving the memory and seeing it happen in real time, or she's actually remembering it, she has red blood. Because she is human at that point.
Oh, I didn't even notice that. That's that's a nice little detail.
In the beginning, it would have been before she like had any context for what was going on.
Yeah, okay. Well, and it makes sense because it's entirely in her head at the time, and she believes she's Kree. Mm-hmm. So, okay, yeah. That's a good eye, Cady.
Thanks.
This is one of the reasons I watch movies with you.
In that same sequence, in the beginning, when it's no context, there's a figure kind of walks out towards her, and it's a Skrull warrior, and in the actual memory, it's Yon-Rogg walking towards her. So I mean, it's an interesting kind of not parallel, but like reveal. I mean,
I'm not saying the movie doesn't have its moments.
Oh yeah, no.
I was a little bit worried going in that they were going to lean really hard on the 90s thing, and it was going to be like a whole thing, and I can happily say that, they totally did that.
Yeah, and that really set the bar. That started it, too, with the overreaction.
Everything just started kind of unraveling. I mean, what do we have? We got... when she lands on Earth, she crashes into the roof of a Blockbuster Video.
Which is kind of fun.
That's full of all these period-appropriate films. Hook and True Lies are the two that I remember. Going through the movie, We hear Salt and Peppa's What a Man, there's a Radio Shack, Game Boy, Rock the Vote, Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness, Alta Vista, Nine Inch Nails, TLC's Waterfalls, Pagers, Desiree's You Gotta Be, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Nirvana, Come As You Are, No Doubt, Just a Girl, Nerf Gun. We get it. It was the 90s. After that establishing scene, we were like, oh, okay, it's in the 90s, right? Everything else should be restrained. Less is more. After we know that it's in the 90s, we need that scene to know.
Yeah. Well,
but in terms of yes, make sure that there's no one walking around with a smartphone, or if they drive by a strip mall, make sure that there are no businesses in that strip mall that didn't exist in 1995.
the music part of it didn't bother me at all. I mean, other things for sure.
Yes, and the music, obviously, in a movie set in 1995, when you're not working off the score, the soundtrack should absolutely be music that existed at the time. But everything past that, it was exhausting.
I think the only thing that jumped out at me as like, back in the 90s was like the dial-up.
I'm just like, I don't need something that's distinctly 90s in every shot. The fact that the 1990s were the 1990s is not in and of itself funny. It's a movie set in the 90s. That's not funny. It just is. But every little 90s reference got a laugh. Just remember the 90s is not a joke.
Right about that introduction in the movie, the whole blockbuster sequence, a few minutes later we're introduced to a very young Coulson and Fury who show up to kind of handle the situation. Yep. I don't know why. For some reason in my head, it was like, oh, he's been Director Fury forever, so I was not expecting, a level 3 S.H.I.E.L.D. Agent Fury.
Agent Fury, yeah.
Level 3! That's so low!
Since you bring it up, I mean, first of all, the de-aging was great. At no point did I not think I was looking at Samuel L. Jackson from the 90s. He distinctly, I was waiting for it the whole movie, and by the whole movie I mean about half the movie when it finally happened. Nick Fury refers to S.H.I.E.L.D. as S.H.I.E.L.D. That's not inherently a problem, because that's what S.H.I.E.L.D. is. But it always kind of bugged me in the original Iron Man.
Yeah.
How Agent Coulson referred to, for the whole movie until the very, very last scene, it as Strategic Homeland, Intervention, Enforcements, and Logistic Division. That's the one.
Until Pepper was like, oh, that's a mouthful.
And then he's like, just call us S.H.I.E.L.D. And it always bothered me because how could they not have noticed after 70 years of existence as an organization or whatever that it spelled S.H.I.E.L.D.?
I like to think that it was some sort of a bet he had going on where he had to just say the whole thing.
That actually makes it a lot better. But the point is, it makes perfect sense that Nick Fury is calling it S.H.I.E.L.D. and that someone had figured it out before then. But it does make me wonder why, if that's the case, Gregg spent the whole movie calling it that.
Headcanon.
And I will accept that as a possible explanation.
The only thing that I had seen as far as trailers or whatever, because I didn't really watch it, is I saw, and it's very strange because every time it's the same thing that happened, I would look up at a TV and it would be this specific part of a trailer before I would look away.
Yep.
Was Carol Danvers punching an old woman in the face. And it's nice to finally have context for that.
Anyone who actually knew anything about the movie beforehand and knew the Skrulls were in it was like, it's a Skrull, obviously. But there was a huge backlash. People were like, superheroes shouldn't be punching old ladies.
That's what I had heard too. I was like, well, obviously that's not what that is. Did you even take a second to think?
You're right. So it's probably not an old lady. In that same scene, when they're on the train, we get another Stan Lee cameo, a proper one, where he's actually in the movie.
The actual cameo.
It was a little bit odd. He's on the train. He's holding up it read as a newspaper to me, but apparently I think it was a script actually.
I thought it was a book.
I could be wrong. He's sitting there and he keeps saying this one line over and over. Trust me, true believer. Trust me, true believer. Like he's trying to memorize it or something. And fun fact, it turns out that is a line from his cameo in the 1995 Kevin Smith film Mallrats. So he was clearly sitting on the train trying to memorize his lines for that movie.
Oh my god, I love that.
It's a really nice, because out of context, it was really weird. He was just saying, trust me, true believer, trust me, true believer. He was having a stroke or something. It was freaky. So I had to look into it. And it was a nice little moment.
I didn't think that it was, even not having any clue that was what that was supposed to have been, I didn't think it was weird, because it's Stan Lee. And she looked at him and gave him a little, Stan Lee.
Yeah, but even it's Stan Lee, and he's got, 70 plus years of comic book writing in his past. Clearly it was a reference to something, but if you don't know if you put that aside, the Stan Lee element aside, if you were on a train and some guy was just sitting there saying, trust me, true believer, trust me, true believer, to himself, you'd think he was the crazy one on the train.
I like that a lot.
There's always one.
Yeah, no, I like that. That's really cool.
Yeah.
I had 3 issues during this film. One of them was the teasing of losing his eye. The first one was in the car crash. when he was in the car with the Skrull and like it crashed or whatever, he came out and he had like a cut across the top of his eye, and I was like, oh my god, are they gonna like reveal how it happened?
Your eyebrow is not your eye.
Well, I don't know exactly where it was. It was like, it was enough to be like, oh my god, are they gonna address the issue? And then it happened another time, and I don't quite recall what it was. I guess it doesn't really matter too much. So at the end of it, he's scratched by an alien cat.
Yes.
And it gets infected.
We're just gonna tell you now, Goose is not actually a cat. It's Furklin.
Flurkin is what I have written down.
Yes, that sounds right. Which I guess it looks like a cat, but it's got like a bottomless stomach and tentacles for a mouth.
It's a Cthulhu cat. But just it felt, once it finally happened, it felt like such a throwaway thing for like what was built up. He says at one point, the last time I trusted someone, I lost an eye.
Yeah, he trusted the cat.
I guess.
He trusted Goose. Too much, actually.
He had a weak spot for
Apparently,
cats.
Nick Fury fucking loves cats. Because he melts the moment that he meets Goose.
It's true. I mean,
he becomes the least bad motherfucker I've ever seen in my life. I'm not gonna lie, and I'm not proud of this. Until it happened, I forgot that Nick Fury lost an eye at some point. I was watching Samuel L. Jackson from the 90s on a screen, and then it happened, and I was like, oh right, he lost an eye at some point, didn't he? And we never found out how. And to be honest, the cat thing doesn't bother me, because it was kind of funny, and I was not expecting it.
It doesn't bother me that it was a cat thing.
But also, let's be honest here. Yeah, okay, he's such a badass. He probably lost it in battle. But people lose eyes all the time doing stupid 99% of lost eyes are because of some stupid thing that happened. Not because you were in a war or anything. It's because you walked into a branch.
It doesn't bother me. Initially, when I first saw it, I was like, well, that's just stupid. And the reason is just there was so much, like, it was made to seem like such a big thing, which...
Yeah, who's directing this thing? Ryan Johnson?
Probably, he... just built it up to... I'm sure if someone was like, hey, how'd you lose your eye?
Of course he's not going to say a cat scratched.
As long as things happen. But that was the least of my 3 things.
Oh, that was only one of them?
I said 3.
Oh, Jesus.
No, 3. It was...
Do we want to tackle them now, or will you pepper them in as we go forward?
The third and final one is fine now. It has to do with the Tesseract. But the other one was just certain characters, and thinking about it, it kind of makes sense. Certain characters just felt very flat. But the one that, like, bothered me the most was... What's her name? Maria?
Maria, yeah.
Maria. For someone who's, like, the best friend of the main character, she's the one who's going to be like, oh my god, you're Carol Danvers, and, like, she just was very, very flat.
Yeah, the two actresses didn't really seem to have much chemistry with each other. And it kind of, and part of it was probably just the way that it was written. I mean, she was reading the lines from the script, and she was supposed to be kind of cold and distant and pissed off at Carol for disappearing. But it was, it did. I know what you're talking about. It felt a little bit odd. But a point that probably needs to be addressed at some point just because of the significance of it. Dr. Wendy Lawson, she developed faster than light travel, and Carol was the pilot that she had testing it. It turns out that she was a secret Kree agent named Mar-vell.
That's where the name of the movie comes from.
Well, Dr. Wendy Lawson, Mar-vell's alter ego when he first came to Earth in the comics was Walter Lawson. So yes, the Mar-vell in this universe is a woman. Not really a problem. I'm sure that there are some very specific comic book fans out there whose favorite is Captain Marvel for whatever reason. Far be it from me to take that away from them. And my heart goes out to them because, this pretty much guarantees that we're never going to get an MCU adaptation of the Captain Marvel they've known and loved. I don't think the fact that they made her a woman is a big issue. It should also be noted that she, like the original Mar-vell in the comics, became a traitor to the Kree Empire because she saw them for what they were, the warmongers that they are, and she wanted peace, and just like Mar-vell in the comics. But it is a little sad that a character as significant as Mar-vell in the comics is now being relegated to this bit part because she's dead. Not that necessarily means anything these days. And what was I going to say? There's another thing that relates to this. Oh yeah, the Kree are the real bad guys.
What a twist!
But it wasn't presented like a twist. So you sort of learned it naturally.
Yeah.
It wasn't like Michael Keaton opening the door. It's something that you were like vaguely aware of for the whole movie, but then someone pointed it out and you were like, oh yeah, no, yeah.
Because then you were
right.
like, oh right, the Kree suck.
Yeah,
like,
they're dicks. Every other time we've seen them, they've been dicks. And then the Skrull's like, they're trying to like genocide us, and she's like, oh yeah. That's awful.
I guess so. No.
So, which is one of the reasons I mentioned it earlier that the Skrulls turned out to be have a little bit more depth to them than I was anticipating. I thought they were just going to be mindless, but then there's that nice scene when they get to the ship and Talos is reunited with his family, and there's like a very human Skrull moment.
A very emotional moment.
Yeah, where
Relatable.
there's like a kiss on the forehead and all that stuff. It's really sweet. And it didn't need to be in there, but it did add a little bit of depth to a movie that otherwise I felt was kind of lacking in it. So.
So it is at this point, while they're on the ship after the Skrull family has all been reunited, that it is revealed that the Tesseract was behind the majority of this. Immediately, I was very confused because why is it there? What's going on? What's happening?
Oh, you know exactly why it's there, and it has nothing to do with the movie universe. Because they were like, yeah, let's put it in there.
Well,
people will recognize it.
It's partly true, because then I was like, well, there has to be a reason that it's there. So I went looking.
Please.
Project Pegasus is briefly mentioned in this film. And I was like, I know that name. Why do I know that name? Pegasus is... It's
the project that Dr. Lawson was working on.
Yes, it's the project that was developing the faster-than-light travel, which is what the Tesseract was being used for.
Yes. As the space gem, that makes sense.
Yes. Going back to Avengers, the facility that they went to, where the Tesseract was being held and Loki busted into, there's a plaque on the wall that says, SHIELD so-and-so, NASA so-and-so, Pegasus Project Facility.
Okay.
So, the Pegasus Project was what? Wow. Yeah. So, I knew the name. I'm also fairly...
From that?
Yes.
You've watched that movie way too many times.
I'm also and I was looking through other things too, but like they've mentioned it by name before as well. So there's a plaque on the wall, and I'm also fairly certain that that facility that they were at in Avengers is in the same building where they went to in this movie.
Went to Pegasus. Yeah.
Yes.
Pegasus
so
HQ.
That's that.
Okay. I can follow that.
Yep. Howard Stark They found it in the 50s or 40s, whenever they went searching for Captain America, they found it in the ocean, and it's been there the whole time. It was loaned out to work on this faster-than-light travel by a Pegasus, so still within the same thing. And then when it was brought back down, it was put back into their custody.
Fury.
Where the next time we really see it in the movieverse going chronologically is at the end of Thor. There's a after credit sequence where Selvig sees it.
Yeah.
So... it works.
It does work, yeah.
But I had to look for it.
You mentioned Maria earlier and how her character seems kind of flat. That scene is kind of the exact moment when I started realizing that there were some cracks in the way this movie was made. There's the scene like right after she gets to her house and she's telling her who she, first of all, Maria's telling her, oh yeah, you're Carol Danvers. And then Monica, Maria's daughter, pulls Auntie Carol into the next room and shows her like all this memorabilia that they've held on to, pictures of her and things like that, and basically just explains to Carol who she is, and then Carol's just Carol again. All of her memories are back. There's no weird like trauma or questioning, and it is a classic example. It could not be a more classic example of the idea of telling, not showing, which you're not supposed to do in movies. And it's a real shame. Because, honestly, her regaining her memories could have been the whole plot of the movie.
Yeah. It kind of felt like
there was a lot of potential there.
Well,
and then it just happened, and the movie progressed from there, and it devolved into a video game action QuickTime sequence.
Yeah.
And it was really disappointing to me, and I don't think it did a good service to the character, which is sort of what I've been hinting at this whole time.
It started to feel like that's what they wanted to do with it, because that's how she sort of started to, like... remember things, was like weird flashbacks.
Yeah, and then it just happened, and I was like, oh, okay, the movie's not over. We have another hour and a half. What?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was poorly executed. There's one other, like, thing that, in addition to what I was saying before about the show don't tell and all that weird stuff, another really missed opportunity here, and it's one of the reasons that it bugged me, and I didn't feel that this movie was everything it could have been. There's the final battle. She's fighting Yon-Rogg, right? And Yon-Rogg says something about how you'll never really be in control if you can't control your emotions. And in the back of our heads, we all know that this is the first Marvel movie with a female lead, right? And having watched Wonder Woman as a reminder before I came into this, there's that one scene, and he'd said it several times before, but didn't really register in my brain that's sort of a connection, because, like, the old stereotype is women can't control their emotions, and they're all emotional and all that crap. And Yon-Rogg is here mansplaining to her, you can't control your emotions, and then, let's just fight hand to hand like old times, and then we'll know for sure whether or not you're better. And then she just blasts him in the face, which is absolutely what she should have done. And she says something like, I don't have to prove anything to you. Which, given the context, does have sort of a very feminist overtone. I'm not saying that this movie had to be about that.
Yeah.
But I think one of the reasons that Wonder Woman worked so well as a film, and I know you still haven't seen it, is because in addition to being an okay movie, it had something to say in addition to being a superhero movie. You know, it was a comment on the struggle of women to this day in society. And maybe it's just me, because I'm not a woman. I don't know how any of this read or what the expectations were. And in some ways, it's actually progress that a movie can be made about a female superhero that's not centered around that. Sure. But that one scene, for some reason, it hit me right I felt like it hit me right in the face after a whole movie in which it hadn't really come up at all. And like I said, if the movie had been creatively shot, there's merit in that. If the movie had centered around certain other things, plot-wise, that would have been good too. If in short of those things, if the movie had something to say beyond just being a generic superhero story, that could also have helped. And I feel like the lack of all of those things is really where the weakness in the script was for me.
Yeah, that moment didn't read like that to me, but then again, until I like stopped and thought about it, that the part in Infinity War, where like, what was it, Scarlet Witch was like in a bind, and then they all showed up with like, we're here together. That was
simultaneously a very, it's like, yeah, okay, women are badasses, but it's also kind of, it can mean both things.
Yeah.
So
in this one, in Captain Marvel, I mean, I didn't feel that at all during the movie.
Well, I feel extra weird now because I feel like I'm the one that always brings it up, and I'm a man, and I feel I don't want to mansplain to you. It's tough.
Yeah, no.
Sometimes.
Yeah, no, I don't feel like
just trying to be a good guy.
Yeah, no, it's fine. No, I don't feel like you're mansplaining.
At the end of the movie, there's a little scene to explain to the general dumb audience members and tie everything back together. He's like, oh, well, now that I know super beings exist, we better be prepared for more, so I should start making a list of all the super beings and find them and bring them together or whatever. He types up the Protectors Initiative on his screen. And then he Fury looks at a picture of Carol Danvers, an old picture of Carol Danvers in uniform, standing on her plane, the kind. And it says, her call sign was Avenger, or something like that. Now, in the comics, her call sign was, I think, Cheeseburger. So clearly they shoehorned that in. I don't think that scene was necessary at all.
Yeah.
It was very clearly oh, look, Darth Vader's standing on the bridge of the Death Star at the end of Revenge of the Sith. It's one of those, people are dumb, and sometimes studios feel like they have to spell it out. We are not those people. If I were editing it, I probably would have just left the whole damn thing out. Now
that I think about it, too, because at the moment I was like, all right, cool, but why? And now the more I think about it, yeah, that really was unnecessary.
Let's talk about that, not the post-credit scene, but the mid-credit scene. Everyone's back at Avengers Initiative. It's after the events of the decimation. And they're talking about the pager that they found in the pile of what was Samuel Jackson. And it's still transmitting a signal, and then it stops.
They have it in some sort of like apparatus that looks like it was like some sort of charging thing.
Yeah.
And then it finally had like run down, and she's like, get this back up. I need to know like what it was.
And then
doing.
they turn around, and Carol Danvers is standing there, and she says, "Where's Fury?" And then they cut to the credits. My issue is that is, I guarantee that is an actual scene from the movie.
Probably how it opens.
Or very early on. Yeah. But that's my point, is
actually,
they did this with Doctor Strange. They had that little scene with Thor, and before I knew that it was actually ripped right out of the movie, I was like, okay, that's kind of funny. And then it was in the movie, and I was just like, yeah, we know this part.
I was kind of disappointed about that, actually, that it was in the movie.
And now they're doing it again, and I'm just like, why can't just give us extras?
Or
that's what those things are supposed to be. Those
just
should be
open that second after. That'd be okay.
Yeah, I think part of it is maybe just because dumb audience. You remember how people were pissed at the way that Avengers 2 opened. I feel like it's one of those, it's like, if we do a new scene, then those people that leave as soon as the credits start rolling, they'll be completely lost. So we'll just put something from,
I thought it was a really cool tie-in, but that's fine. James.
Yep.
Would you recommend this movie?
Honestly, I can't in good conscience vote yay. Because, it's part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and if you are a fan of that, you're going to want to see it just because. And also, very clearly, it's going to factor pretty importantly into Endgame.
Yeah.
As well as, probably moving forward, Carol Danvers will probably become sort of a mainstay in the franchise for a while. But outside of that, as a standalone movie, it's just kind of meh. I feel like the most important parts or the most interesting parts of Carol Danvers as a character, her memory loss and maybe her time on Hala, are both just sort of glossed right over, and those could have been the whole movie, as far as I'm concerned. There's nothing particularly creative or artistic or interesting about the way that it's shot or the way that the story is told. I could forgive both of those things easily if the movie had something more to say than just, this is a superhero movie. Look at this person with powers. You know, like Black Panther was just rife with overtones about the struggle of people of color in modern society. And Wonder Woman, as much as it pains me to praise a DC film, was by itself, it was not an incredible movie, but it was decent. It was good. But it was definitely a better movie than this one because it had a strong female lead and she was in, you know, a world where even though she was strong and powerful and smart, everyone kept telling her she was less than, and she prevailed over that. And in this case, the movie almost felt like maybe they were like, oh yeah, we should probably like add a little bit at the end. I'm not even sure that was intentional. It just didn't have any of that. And that made it all the weaker for me. So no, I feel like the movie was a missed opportunity. There was a lot that they could have done and didn't, and they just traded it in for a bland superhero movie. So, yeah, kind of not. But I cannot stress this enough, Internet. It is not because the main character is a woman, or that it was directed by a woman. It was a weak script. Cady.
James.
Would you recommend this movie?
Cady of a few months ago would have said no. She was at the point where, like, just done with the whole Marvel Universe, like, just very despondent about the whole thing. Cady of now, a little bit despondent as well still.
You do you, girl.
Gotta stay true. I had enough of kind of like a pep talk to myself, I guess, and just from other movies beforehand to
in no small part thanks to Into the Spider-Verse.
Into the Spider-Verse, yes. That did a good deal for, I'm not official MCU at all, but like just to kind of reinvigorate
the genre, yes.
Reinvigorate my love for the comic book movie. I agree with you totally on you know, the weak points that it had. My biggest issue having been the Tesseract, which I found a way to kind of justify. I'm so happy that I found that. It bothered me a lot. But yes, Cady of today would recommend this movie. I feel like I've grown as a person, as a movie viewer. Still with like the direction of the MCU in general, I feel like because all of these other individual movies were all culminating to the Infinity War, I need to see where it's going to go afterwards before I can really reinvest. Yeah. Because
this does feel, it's like, it's in light of what has happened and what's about to happen, it just feels kind of like, I don't know what to do with this at all.
And I feel like that's a big part of why I was able to enjoy this one as much as I did, is because I was like, you know what, let's suspend the final judgment, which I've been just dishing out regularly and, you know, being a grumpy puss about it. Once we see what happens after Infinity War, I may change my mind again about the whole thing. I might make everything better. Like if they can kind of branch off back into individual movies or just see what direction they're going in. Return to formula.
That's what I'm looking forward to.
Yes. But, you know, overall. So I would recommend this movie. I enjoyed it with the exception of its few flaws that it did indeed have. It could it will have a big part to play in Infinity War 2. So even just for that, to kind of prepare yourself to see that movie next month, I would definitely recommend it.
So yeah, those are our thoughts on Marvel Studios Captain Marvel, Marvel Studios Marvel. Go ahead, go see it, form your own opinion. Continue greasing those Marvel palms so they'll keep making movies and hopefully they'll be better than this one. If you liked our back and forth here, like, comment, subscribe, you know, the usual bit. And yeah, you'll be seeing us in not too long as Endgame comes out in, 6 weeks? So,
oh god.
Until then, we have been Cady and Cady, and we'll see you soon.
What's up? You have selected...
I love 90s.